Welcome to the Womanwhy podcast. I'm Peta Sklars in Los Angeles, California. The purpose of this podcast is to read my blog that I started in January of 2018. My blog is about sobriety, divorce, and following that inner voice. So this is my journey from that time to the present. The blog post I'm going to read is called Be Still, and it was published on February 12th, 2018. I was exhausted, hungover, depressed, but I kept it all inside and wondered why I felt so bad. None of the people in my life had asked me to do any of the things I did for them. I did everything of my own free will, and I didn't see I was creating my own negative pattern. I was trying to be everything to everyone, but I realize now I wasn't even asking any of the people in my life what they wanted. I was giving them what I thought they needed. So no one, including myself, was happy. 5 years ago, I was so stuck in this pattern, I couldn't even see it was of my own creation, and I was mad at everyone after a night of too much wine and not enough thought. It was the evening that I was attending a charity event for work. My husband and I had decided to stay downtown and make a night of it. Since we were downtown, I insisted that my husband and I go to Macy's before the charity event to buy him a suit for my niece's upcoming wedding. This was an important wedding because my sister had called me out of the blue after not talking to me for years to invite me. I never asked her why she hadn't returned my calls in the past or why she hadn't called me sooner. I just saw this as a window for us to reconnect, and I wanted my husband to look the part at the wedding. So I insisted that my husband get a new suit. I made him try on all sorts of sports jackets and pants until he reluctantly bought what I had selected. Then later that same evening, we went to the work function. I had organized the meeting of my new boss and my old boss so that they could collaborate together. This was advantageous to both of them, but I really got nothing out of it, which didn't enter my mind at the time. I proceeded to drink way too much red wine that night and lost my husband in the crowd at the charity auction. I figured I would catch up with him later, and I went upstairs with my old boss's wife and helped her book a hotel through Hotwire because they were too drunk to drive home. Then I came back downstairs and purchased some expensive bottles of wine at the auction that I couldn't afford. We all went to an after party, and since I kept losing my husband in the crowd, a lady there that I had never met before asked me if I loved my husband. I thought this was an odd question, but instead of telling her to mind her own business, I gave her a full explanation of how much I loved him and that I was just busy talking to everyone at the party to keep track of him. My husband and I had left the party, and I was so drunk I had to stop at a food truck and buy a greasy hamburger and fries to soak up the wine. The next morning, my head was pounding, and my husband and I barely said a word as we watched a football game in the hotel bar and waited for my daughter to meet us to go dress shopping for her winter formal. The rest of the afternoon was spent in a hungover haze of dress shopping and anger at everyone who didn't appreciate me. My sister wouldn't appreciate that I went to the effort to buy a new suit for my husband for her daughter's wedding. My bosses didn't appreciate that I had introduced them and sacrificed my evening by drinking too much wine and buying expensive auction items. My old boss's wife didn't appreciate me helping her find a hotel. My husband didn't appreciate that I had taken him to a fun event and party. I was mad at everyone. I didn't like being angry, and so I tried to cover it the best I could by going to the gym and working out for hours at a time. I was tired after my workouts, but I was still edgy and unsatisfied. I thought at the time that this must mean I need to try harder. I didn't take the time to reflect and see that the effort I was making and the actions I were taking were not working. All I knew is that I felt bad and I needed to take an action to make myself feel better. I didn't know at the time that no action was going to make me happy because I wasn't listening to myself or anyone else. I didn't know at the time. I just needed to be still. I just needed to be still. So this is an interesting blog post because I wrote it at the time. Me and my husband actually got in a huge fight this next day. And at the time, I was kind of blaming myself for it. But I see, he had a part in it too, which we were still married at the time I wrote this blog post. So obviously, I didn't want to call him out. But there was truth in the fact that I was unhappy and I was just doing things for other people in hopes to make them happy so I could maybe get a little happiness back. I wanted to mend the relationship with my sister, We hadn't talked in probably 3 to 4 years. But there was still so many words that were unsaid between us, but I wasn't asking any questions. We weren't having those conversations. Me and my husband, were edgy, to say the least. And I thought this would be a good night out for us. What I didn't say in this blog post is that he kept on losing himself in the crowd. And when we went to the after party and started dancing, he was nowhere to be found. So it wasn't so much me leaving him as him also disappearing. And the next day, when we woke up, he was just very rude to me. And I blamed myself because I thought, oh, well, I got too drunk. I didn't pay attention to him. Maybe he's right in being angry at me. So this is kind of a good blog post because it shows my complete lack of control of my life. I mean, literally, like I was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, giving all my energy to everybody, thinking that, if I have a good relationship with my sister, that'll make me happy. If my husband has a good evening, a fun evening, that'll, make me happy. If my bosses start collaborating at work, my old boss and my new boss, somehow they'll look at me and think I'm a good person for putting them together. But the truth of the matter is, in this situation, in this blog post, I wasn't getting anything out of any of this. I was just spending too much money, getting too drunk, and not feeling good about myself at all. So it's almost kind of hard to look back at this and see the person that I was. But I have come so far from this space, and I really had to make a conscious effort to stop putting myself out there and giving away my energy to people who really didn't ask for it to begin with. And if they did ask for it, I wasn't asking the questions to figure out, what their intention was. So I was kind of flying blind. And I was already so depleted of energy that it was just a really hard time. And I look back and I see how far I've come, and I'm glad I wrote about it because it really makes me realize how far I've come from being that person. And I know in my heart I was trying to do the right thing. I was just going about it completely wrong.